Howdy, we are now on to part 4 of chapter 5. So here we're looking at the likelihood of attack and also the likelihood of response. So in addition to market commonality, resource similarity, and the drivers of awareness, motivation, and ability, 3 more specific factors affect the likelihood a competitor will take competitive actions. One is the potential for first mover benefits or second or late mover benefits. There's also organizational size and also quality. So with first mover incentives, a first mover is a firm that takes an initial competitive action in order to build or defend its competitive advantages or to improve its market position. So first movers allocate funds for product innovation and development. They're coming up with new things all the time. They are likely to engage in aggressive advertising, perhaps may have advanced research and development. First movers can gain the loyalty of customers who may become committed to the firm's goods or services. They may also gain market share that can be difficult for competitors to take during future competitive rivalry. Second movers, a second mover responds to the first mover's competitive action, typically through some level of imitation. They are able to study the customer's reactions to product innovations. They try to avoid any mistakes the first mover made, and to avoid them, they're able to learn. They can avoid both the mistakes and the huge spending of the first movers, and they develop more efficient processes and technologies. To give you an example of this, if you look at the cell phone market and you consider first mover and second mover advantages, if you look specifically at smartphones, the iPhone was the first really big introduction of a smartphone with a touch screen as we know it today. They gained first mover advantages, and then the Samsung Galaxy came out afterward, and they were able to come in as a second mover. They still have a lot of advantages. They were able to overcome some of the hurdles that Apple would have faced, and yet they are clearly a second mover. There are situations, however, in which a second mover can end up being the one that does the best. Now let's look at late movers, and you may consider all of the other smartphone options that exist. Think of the Google Pixel or the Motorola lines of smartphones. They tend to come at a lot lower cost. So late movers respond to a competitive action only after considerable time has elapsed. Any success achieved will be slow in coming and much less than that achieved by first and second movers. Late movers' competitive actions allow them to learn only average returns and may delay understanding of how to create value for customers. However, even though they may only have average returns, that doesn't mean that it's not necessarily worth them competing. We also will consider things like organizational size. So small firms are more likely to launch competitive actions, to be quicker in doing so. They may be nimble and flexible. They may rely on speed and surprise to defend competitive advantages or develop new ones while engaged in competitive rivalry with larger firms. They may have flexibility that may be needed to launch a greater variety of competitive actions. Then we can compare that to large firms. So large firms are likely to initiate more competitive actions overall, as well as strategic actions during a given time period. Large organizations may have the slack resources required to launch a larger number of total competitive actions. I think it's important here to note that there are benefits to being both large and small. Herb Keller, the former CEO and founder of Southwest Airlines, said, "Think and act big and we'll get smaller. Think and act small and we'll get bigger." He tried to maintain the flexibility and the nimbleness of the small firm, but also to combine that with the benefits of organizational size and greater resource portfolio. A couple of other considerations here would be product quality. So there are a number of dimensions on which a product may have greater quality. Maybe performance or features, flexibility, durability, conformance, serviceability, aesthetics, perceived quality. And these things, if customers are known to prefer the quality of a particular product, it may be difficult. Well, they are likely to have an incentive to build and maintain the quality, but it may be difficult for competitors to try and overcome that quality perception. We may also have quality and service related to things more like timeliness, courtesy, consistency, convenience, completeness, accuracy. In some industries, service is the primary industry, the primary being offered by firms. If you think of a law firm or an accounting firm or many others, they're able to differentiate themselves and compete on cost and quality using a different balance of these. We also will consider the likelihood of response. So responses to a competitor's action are taken when the action leads to better use of a competitor's capabilities to gain or produce stronger competitive advantages or an improvement in its market position. Also, when a competitor's action may damage a firm's ability to use its capabilities to create or maintain an advantage, they have to respond, or if it makes a firm's market position become less defensible. There comes a point where this competition forces firms to react, even when they perhaps wouldn't have wanted to themselves. They would not have wanted to initiate that. So firms study 3 other factors to predict how a competitor is likely to respond to competitive actions. One of these is the type of competitive action, the actor's reputation, and market dependence. So with type of competitive action, we've already discussed strategic and tactical action. So strategic actions elicit fewer total competitive responses. It's more difficult to respond to a strategic action. Also, the time needed to implement and assess a strategic action delays competitors' responses. Tactical actions are generally taken to counter the effects of tactical actions. A competitor likely will respond quickly to tactical actions. It's easy to change price in response to a competitor, where it may be more difficult to launch a new product line, which would be a strategic action. We may consider an actor's reputation. So reputation may allow you to understand what firms are likely to do. You may have an idea of a reputation being built over time based on the actions and responses taken by firms. So firms study responses that a competitor has taken previously when attacked in order to predict what their response is likely to be. We may consider here Walmart's price match policy. There are areas where if a new competitor comes in and changes price, Walmart will compete with them on price. They'll actually change the price in store, or for a temporary price reduction, such as a weekly ad, they have been known to match competitors' prices. This allows Walmart to protect itself in many ways from competitive attacks based on price. And competitors are certainly aware of that. We'll also look at market dependence. So market dependence is the extent to which a firm's revenues or profits are derived from a particular market. Competitors with high market dependence are likely to respond strongly to attacks threatening their market position. So for question number 4, I want you to identify a first mover, a second mover, and late movers in the social media industry. Which company is the strongest today? Were they a first, second, or late mover themselves?